In the beginning, all books got the number, the ISBN, in order to be identified uniquely. Later, the same was introduced for journals, and today we need also unique identification for scientists. As you know, the number of scientists is doubling from decade to decade, and in some cultures there are 100,000 people having the same last and first names. So today we are inviting representatives for one of the most important initiatives, ORCID, Open Researcher and Contributor ID. Unfortunately, Laurel Hack was not able to join us here, but instead it is my pleasure to welcome Martin Helmut Fenner, who is the president of the ORCID European Union. He will tell you why do you need an ORCID.
As Juan said, I'm working for ORCID EU. I'm one of 2 people working for ORCID in Europe. And the total number of staff is 8, telling you that this is a young organization. The first person, Laura Haag, the executive director, was hired April of last year. And the problem that ORCID wants to try to help to address is, of course, to figure out something that's very relevant for Scientometrics, who produced which research outputs at what institution with funding by whom. And a big part of this is, of course, to understand what researchers did what research, and you really, once you do this on a scale which is beyond the individual level of individual persons or small groups or departments, for this to scale, you really need unique identifiers for these people. And I don't want to go into this because we don't have time of all the wonders of name variations over the world, which is that there are some countries where there are no last names, or everybody seems to have 1 or 5 last names, like in Korea, or people change their names because they marry and all these other things. I think you're very aware of this problem, so I don't want to go into this. Just to say, the only solution is to give a unique number to people, and ORCID is trying to do that. In a moment I will talk about what is special about ORCID, because there are already other initiatives trying to do the same and have done this in the past. Here I just want to point out that it's not enough to give identifiers to people, but another problem, which is actually might even be more difficult, is that you also need identifiers for institutions where these people are working. And the problem with institutions is that they always change in contrast to people. They are rearranged, reorganized, different departments, etc. ORCID is not helping with that, but because it's very important for the ORCID system, we are working with ISSI, which is another organization providing this infrastructure, so that all the ORCID records, the institution affiliated with people in the ORCID system will all use identifiers from ISSI, which are then provided by Ringgold. And of course, you also need unique identifiers for funding organizations, and FundRev is probably the most promising initiative there, linking then grants to people and projects. And of course, on the other hand, you need identifiers for the research outputs, and this list here is incomplete. You have DOIs for journal articles, you have DOIs for data sets and other things. DataCite is not just about data sets. But of course, there are many other things, in particular dissertations, thesis work, and some of them have DOIs, for example, from DataCite. And there are monographs and book chapters, and only some of them have DOIs from Crossref. So it's just basically, if you want to link researchers to people, you need unique identifiers for the research outputs. And something that's still very new, but I think will be increasingly important, is unique identifiers for samples and reagents, because that's also important. If you created an important reagent or you found a sample that people want to describe, what I have shown here as an example is the international geosample number, which is if somebody did a very expensive and complicated expedition in Antarctica and, for example, collected samples there from the ice core, you want to find the papers and data sets describing these samples, because it's not so easy to just go back there and repeat that. And for that, you need unique identifiers. And I would hope that we see more of this in other areas. It's not enough to just have unique identifiers, but you also have to link them to people. And you have to do this in a standardized way so that you're doing this in different places. You can talk to each other, and I think there are standards for doing that in Serif, at least in Europe, is probably the best standard, in particular if you think about researchers and researcher information in universities, in research information systems. And then, of course, you need global databases to link these things together. You need local systems, and these Scopus and Avidas are just two examples of many systems that do that. But just a reminder, you need these systems because otherwise your unique identifier will not be helpful, and that's one of the reasons why ORCID is not a system that just gives everybody a number, but it also allows researchers to claim their work, so to make the link to research outputs. So why is ORCID different? I mean, there's the old joke, if there are too many standards, so you just create a new one. The author identify initiatives that have been there before, they usually had one of the few problems. In particular, they were focused, so they were for a particular discipline. So economics, for example, has solved this long ago with REPAC, or they were in a particular country, and the best example might be Brazil. Their LATES system is one of the first author identifier system, and within Brazil that works perfectly, but of course research is not focused on discipline or institution or country, so you need global systems, and you need a system that's not owned by a single organization, whether it's a private company that builds a business model around it or a government organization. That simply wouldn't work. So that's very important that ORCID is a non-profit organization with a board, with a variety of stakeholder groups influencing the decisions of the organization. And the third part is really you need to build something that's integrated. In all the systems, researchers and administrators and everybody else is using on a daily basis. There must be places where you can put ORCIDs in and get ORCIDs out. Today is exactly 9 months that ORCID as a service has launched. And maybe it's a little bit too early to think about whether this is a success, but I think we're on the right track. If you look at numbers of people who have signed up for ORCID, that's probably close to 200,000 by now. Member organizations, more than 60. And what's also important is that ORCID is integrating in all kinds of places already. So I think we're on the right track. This is the number of registered users until a little over a week ago. That was 185,000. Of course, that's a very small number if you look at the potential number of researchers there are, which is, depending on how you define them, anywhere worldwide, probably from 6 to 25 million. But I think ORCID is on track to reach 1 million registered users in 2 years. And for now, it's probably in particular useful for specific places. So we have a large number of institutional members, and a university can just have ORCIDs for all their staff and use it within their system. And the other aspect of this slide of just a part of the member organization of ORCID is just to show you this is really across the spectrum. This is not just geographically US or commercial or anything. So you see a large number of publishers, you see universities, you see funders, scholarly societies, and you also see vendors and third-party services, and in particular services that are relevant for Scientometrics, whether it's Thomson Reuters, Web of Science, whether it's Elsevier and Scopus, or smaller organizations like altmetric.com. And just 2 quick examples, and you can do that. If you have a researcher ID from Thomson Reuters, you can sync this to your ORCID profile, so you can, for example, import all the information from ORCID. And within Web of Science research ID, you can as you see on the left, you can look at citation metrics of your publications. And similarly, you can link your ORCID to Scopus, which goes both ways. So you can store your Scopus ID in your ORCID profile and vice versa. So you can use Scopus as a link to ORCID to do citation analysis. And there are also tools that are just built around citation analysis, and just one of several examples, Impact Story, so where you can basically, as a single researcher, go to the website, type in your ORCID, and get a list of publications and their metrics. The publications, of course, come from the ORCID profile, and I have here, this is just an example of what I did. And that's my last slide. Because this was really quick, for more information, I suggest to talk to me during the conference. I will be here until Thursday. You can also contact ORCID staff, or you can come to one of 2 conferences that are happening in October. If you're based in Europe, you can come to CERN for our EU project, Odin, which is specifically looking at ORCID and data side and how to integrate data sets. And the fall ORCID outreach meeting, which takes place in last day of October, or next to last day of October. Thank you very much.